Okay, I'm ready to start.
Amido que não fala.
Well, it all started way back when I was young. We grew up on a farm, a small farm, and what I can remember, we always had Christmas, and we always had people over, people in the neighborhood that didn't have family in the small rural community. And I remember I believed in Santa Claus, and I believed in Santa Claus one more year because a neighbor boy helped me to believe. And I was getting a little older, and I wasn't sure if Santa was real anymore. And I think I seen my mom and dad down there putting gifts under the tree one night as I was growing up. And so the neighbor boy says to me, he says, he looks up in the sky, and it was nighttime, and we're looking up, and we're looking for fallen stars and things like that, young kids do. And we're wondering, and people want to believe. And I remember when I was at that age, I wanted to believe. And the neighbor kid says, well, Santa can be real, just like Jesus. And then he goes on to give me the Jesus story and how Jesus is actually in heaven. And why couldn't Jesus have the power to deliver all these gifts and fill all the wishes of the children in one night? And so he went on to explain how Christmas in his mind worked and how he believed in Santa through Jesus. So I became a little bit of a believer. I believed one more year in Santa and that there was something real. And, then eventually we grow up. Now, we moved from the small farm. We bought a bigger farm. My dad wanted to expand the farming, and so we went and lived out in another area, and we had lots of work to do with the bigger farm. Now, on that farm, I remember us, going to maybe a few Sunday schools. And there was a new community kind of out there, and there was a little community church. So we went to it. My mom brought us as kids. I was maybe 12, 13. And so we go to a couple of Sundays, and we come home, and then a week later, the preacher's coming over with his briefcase, and my parents invite him in, and so he opens his briefcase, pulls out a paper, and he wants 10% of the gross earnings of the farm. My dad was reading on the paper, and he looked at him, and he said, he says, my net, he says, I even on my net income, I'm in the hole. But on my gross, how could I give you gross when I'm not even making money on my net, and I have to work out to pay for the farm? And the preacher says, well, that's why we need your gross income, because then we can shave that piece off and you can write it off. It's a tax write-off. Looks better in your books. And he was trying to tell my dad that. Well, my dad got so upset, he almost threw that guy out through the door. The guy never came back. We never ever went to church again out there. And we still had a Christmas tree, still had people over. We still brought firewood over to the little old guy in the cabin that didn't have family. And Mom would make him a Christmas meal. We did things like that. But my dad did not believe in organized religion. So it's funny how things work. I grew up that way. We didn't really have a Bible open. I didn't even know where the Bible was in the house. But, it seems like we fit all the bill of being a good Christian family. My dad didn't smoke. He wasn't a drinker. He didn't swear, never used the F word. Well, he used the bullshit and the hell and all those words that farmers use. But, he was a good guy, my dad and my mom, both. So that's how I grew up. But one day, we're minding our own business. We're out in the farmyard, and we had cultivators. A cultivator is something that works up the land, and you pull it behind a big tractor. So there's shanks on there, and there's split shanks and just narrow shanks, plow shanks, kind of. Well, we're putting on the cultivator shanks, so you change them. And it's a big job. There's like probably 100 of them to do, and so we have the air wrench, and we're out there working. And I'm helping my dad, and up drives this shiny I would say it would be a chocolate brown Suburban. That's how vivid this is. And it drives up, and out hops these two men with hats, suits, briefcases. They look like government people to me. I was 14 years old. And they walk up, and they knew my dad by name, and my dad stood up, and he listened to them. They talked about the weather, small talk, for a bit. And then one of the guys reaches into his briefcase. Well, you'd think he is reaching in to pull out a gun, because when he pulled out the Watchtower and the Awake magazine, my dad flipped. He changed. He was a different person. And his voice raised. He said, "You put that bullshit back into your briefcase and get the hell out of here, and don't you ever come back." And they didn't ever come back. I'm sure we were a do not call. I didn't know anything about witnesses. They were that was my first kind of experience. But later on, I learned that the family, my mom and dad, had relatives that were a witness. On my mom's side, never knew of the guy. They never talked about witnesses. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't part of any conversation out there at the farm. And then later on, I learned that there was Jehovah's Witnesses living a couple of miles away, and they had a little farm. And they were we always thought they were the weird ones, but whatever. But we never knew I never knew they were a Jehovah's Witness. We drove by there every day. We never ever knew. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. Actually, until I decided to join. It's another story. But so that's kind of my earlier experience. And then when I turned 15, we move into, I had to be bused into a bigger town to go to high school. And so there you got students coming from all over the county into this central hub where the high school is. And there we get to meet a lot more students. So in high school, you get to choose different subjects. All the guys like to choose food science because you go in and you make some cupcakes and stuff and put some grasshoppers in it and feed it to the basketball team. Isn't that what you would do? No, we did stuff like that, but it was harmless fun. So the teacher makes groups, and there's a lot of guys and girls all in this classroom. So I ended up in a group of two other young ladies, girls, and they were Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know how I got in that group, but I was in this little group. There's three to every group, and we were learning to cook. And of course, every guy joins food science to learn to cook, doesn't he? No? For the credits? No. For the girls. Well, in them days, a lot of us farm boys were shy, so you join food science, and maybe you'll meet some of the girls there. Well, anyways, I met these two Jehovah's Witness girls, and it didn't mean anything to me. They said they were Jehovah's Witnesses, thinking it might mean something, but it meant nothing to me. It was just like, oh yeah, like, who cares really? What kind of cupcake are you going to make? So I could eat it, like this is, it didn't mean anything to me back then. And so I had a buddy, and the buddy had the same last name as one of the girls in the food science. Didn't mean anything to me, didn't click. But him and I were kind of like drinking buddies. We would go out drinking at lunch hour and go get a beer or sit in the bar or something like that. So that was kind of my life until my dad caught me one day going into the bar. He was downtown, see me walk into the bar. I was just in high school. I wasn't of legal age, but we kind of grew mustaches, so we looked maybe legal age. Kind of dressed like this. Kind of looked like this right here. Just back there's the corner bar, really. Around the corner. Pub. Every little town has one. So at high school, you're in high school. You're in the town where the pub is. We even tried to go into the liquor store before we were 18, and we were successful. They bought into it, that we were kind of working rig guys. We played the role. So this guy that was my buddy, he was in drama. He was a good actor. and he would do all kinds of stuff. He was a funny guy to be around, so we had a lot of fun together. Until one day, and everyone has kind of a girlfriend, you're infatuated, high school. So I kind of liked this girl, and we were kind of going out, and we weren't doing much, holding hands, maybe a kiss or two. But I find out a couple of days later, I was telling my buddy about my girlfriend, and next thing you know, they're on the bus together because they go that way, I go this way, all the buses leave. And she lived in the same area as he did, so they were on the same bus together. Well, lo and behold, he's necking with her on the bus, my buddy, and with my girlfriend. So when I find that out, well, of course, I break up with both of them. So that's the end of that. That's what I know of that buddy. Well, the reason I'm telling you about this guy is because I meet up with him later in life, and he is an elder. But he's actually a publisher at this time, going out drinking with me. Never ever talked religion or anything, but he was actually living a double life. And we'll talk about that in another story. But that's kind of it. We had a little bit of religion in the family. My great aunt was a Catholic nun, believe it or not. She taught me how to read in grade 3. She worked residential schools, so she knew she was a teacher. And so that was a little bit of religion in the family. My dad really wanted nothing to do with it because he was raised Catholic, met my mom. My mom was United Church, and they weren't allowed to get married. The Catholics, he had to leave the faith. It was a whole big thing. It soured him. And so when we grew up, we would always go to the United Church, to the Sunday school. And that's kind of how it was. I didn't realize until later on it was because of the marriage thing that my dad got really soured over religion. He felt for religion to start dictating who you're going to marry, when you're going to marry, and all of this stuff, he thought it was none of their damn business. And so he wouldn't support religion, organized religion at all. But that's kind of another story. We'll get into that. So that's about it. That's my earlier years. I kind of had a normal life, did the Christmas thing all the time. It was no big deal. We didn't really have a Bible in the house. I found one later when I became a JW, but I had to dig for it. And my mom's mother, she was religious. We always thought she was religious. Grandma, my mom's mom. And she had a bit of indigenous blood in her, but she was religious. How? Well, she could open a Bible. She always had a Bible, and she had 4 kids our age. We grew up together. Actually, they eventually moved to the same property at the big farm, and there was 2 houses. But my grandma, my mom's mom, my grandmother, she could open the Bible and read Ecclesiastes. She loved Ecclesiastes, and she was a really great lady. So that's kind of my religious experience. Not much, but a little bit in high school, and then when I get out of high school, it changes. So, but what I did learn is my dad did not like organized religion. He had no use for it. So that's about that story. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I gotta go.
Amido que